We're going to talk about vertical angles. And all vertical angles are is if you have two crossing lines it's the angles that are opposite each other. So the way we're going to label the angles is with letters A, B, C, and D. Those represent those angles. The way you write that mathematically, for example, is angle A. So with this little symbol there. The thing to know about vertical angles, or angles that are formed by two crossing lines, is that the opposite angles are equal to each other in measurement. So here, angle E, or angle A, the measurement of angle A, will be the same as the opposite angle, which is C. So angle A and angle C equal each other. Similarly, angle B, the opposite angle, is D, so angle B and angle D equal each other. So this is an important concept to know. So for example, if they said angle A is 60 degrees, then we immediately know that angle C is also 60 degrees. Now, the other important concept to know is if you watched the video on some basic geometry terms, is that the measurement of a line is 180 degrees. So these two angles have to be supplementary. Supplementary means that when you add the angles up, they have to equal 180 degrees. A line, just so you can think about this clearly, a lot of people understand a right angle, meaning 90 degrees. So if you have a line that is perpendicular, like perfectly 90 degrees, you know, this is 90 degrees. Well, if this line is perpendicular, then that also means this is 90 degrees. So the total line, angle of the line, is 180 degrees. So the measurement of a line from one side to the other is 180 degrees. That's important to know because here, if we know this is 60 degrees, here's a line. If this is 60 degrees, then from there to there is 180 degrees. So if this is 60, then this has to be 180 minus 60. It has to be 120 degrees. It has to be supplementary. So if this is 60 degrees, we know this is 120 degrees, but now we also know that D is 120 degrees. Because remember, angle B and angle D are the same. So this is a fairly easy concept, so you don't want to get these questions wrong. Just remember that when you have two crossing lines, if they give you one angle, the angle opposite it is equal to it, and that the two side by side have to equal 180 degrees. So once you have this angle, you can easily figure out this angle, just 180 minus this, because these two have to be supplementary. So once they give you one angle, you can figure out all the rest. So let's say we have a picture like this. We label the angles, and they say angle A is 135 degrees. You can now figure out what all the other angles equal. We know right away angle C is 135 degrees, but we also know angle B is 180 minus 135 because they have to be supplementary, and that's going to equal 45 degrees. So angle B is now 45 degrees. Once we know angle B, we know angle D is 45 degrees. If it makes more sense to look at angle A and D, it's the same thing. So you can figure out angle D and then you know angle B. It doesn't matter which order you do this in. But once they give you one angle, you can figure out all the rest of the angles. So, something that is a little bit more complicated but uses the same idea with one addition is when they give you two parallel lines. So I won't be able to draw these exactly parallel, but let's say we have two parallel lines. Parallel means that they never cross. They're never going to intersect. if they give you two parallel lines and then they intersect them with a third line. So here's a third line. We're going to use the same concept we just used plus one additional thing. So here we have A, B, C, and D. But down here we also have angles E, F, G, and H. So we already know that if A is 110 degrees, we know C is 110 degrees because they're opposite. But we also know B is 70 degrees because these are supplementary. Once we know B, we know D is 70 degrees. So we're able to figure out all of these just by knowing angle A equals 110. Now here's the trick that you need to know with this problem. Once you have two parallel lines, and it's key that they have to be parallel in order for this to hold true. Once you have two parallel lines, these opposite angles are also equal. So D is equal to F, C is equal to E. So angle D is equal to angle F, angle C is equal to angle E. When you have two parallel lines that are intersected by a line, the two opposite, D and F, C and E, are equal. So D equals F, C equals E. That's key to know, because again, once we have one of these angles, now we know all the rest, right? Once we know F is 70, we know H is 70. We know E has to be supplementary, so it's 110. Once we know E, we know G is 110. So the way that that they might do this, we'll do one last example here. They're going to give you two parallel lines. They might draw it in a picture like this, with a third line crossing both of them. They'll label the angles in some manner, like this. And they might just have the question say, angle C equals 50 degrees. What is angle H? So if you don't know these concepts, this will probably look like a hard problem, but really it's not, right? So we have angle C equals 50 degrees. We can find all these other angles, but we don't need to in this problem because they're asking us what is angle H. So we need to remember these are two parallel lines, so angle C and angle E are the same. So we automatically know angle E is 50 degrees. Once we know angle E is 50 degrees, angle H has to be supplementary because this is a line. So E and H have to equal 180 degrees. 180 minus 50 is 130 degrees. So what is angle H? 130 degrees.